the Northern Power Women podcast. For your career and your life, no matter what business you're in.
The summer holidays are over, the central heating's threatening to come back on, and most of us haven't got any leave left until Christmas. But don't despair, it's here. Episode 15 of the Northern Power Women podcast. It's the people who make a powerhouse. I'm Sam Walker. Hello. What a spectacular time was had in the Tees Valley for this episode. The energy and optimism in the crowd at Teesside University was just infectious. I loved it. Thanks so much for being there if you came along. If you didn't make it, you've got a treat from a brilliant panel to come on this very episode. So brilliant, they inspired the title of the episode.
It's people who make a powerhouse, and the people in the Tees Valley are making a powerhouse.
You'll also get to catch up with a one-woman powerhouse, the incredible Professor Jane Turner, OBE, hugely successful businesswoman and entrepreneur, and now Pro-Vice-Chancellor at Teesside University. She spoke with such passion about her role and also such incredible candour about her own personal challenges.
I was judged pretty negatively by people at that time around that, therefore how my life would turn out. As a single mum, and I think I just developed this burning inside that actually I will prove them wrong. I don't know who the them were, but people had views about how my life would turn out, and I will go on and I will achieve things. I have no idea what that will look like, but I will never be in a position where you have the right to negatively judge me.
In Ask the Hive, you'll hear the plight of one woman that so many of us can relate to. How to switch off from the dreaded work email. You have some brilliant advice.
I think one of the most important things is recognising that sometimes not thinking about business is good for business.
But as ever, before we delve into all of that, it's time to look back and also look forward to everything that's happening at Northern Power Women HQ. All the news from our great leader, Simone Roche.
Hello, we hope you've had an amazing summer. Welcome to episode 15. We had a brilliant time in Teesside recording the podcast this month. A big thank you to the, as ever, awesome Professor Jane Turner, OBE, for hosting us. She gathered a wonderful audience and also a brilliant panel. So thank you to Caroline Theobald, Paul Berry and Angela Lockwood for really engaging in some brilliant conversations. Check out the video our new digital marketing apprentice Christian put together on day one in the job, no less. So please have a look at that and you can see what goes on behind the scenes at the podcast. Nominations are now open for the fourth Northern Power Women Awards with our headline partner, Manchester Airport Groups, for a second year. Thank you so much for your support. We urge you to celebrate role models from all genders, sectors, socioeconomic groups. We had a record 959 last year, so let's get shouting about the wonders of the North. This month they also hopped onto the Northern Powerhouse tour bus and headed over to Camelot Shipbuilders with Jake Berry, Minister for the Northern Powerhouse last week. So cue a boat face selfie, no less, while we were at the Shipbuilders. Big thanks to Henry Morrison and Emma Green from the Northern Powerhouse Partnership for inviting me along on the tour. I've been having discussions in the last week as well with the Minister's Office around gender equality commitments across the North, so we will keep you informed on what's going to happen and where we can get you involved. School's back and we've got some great events coming up. On the 11th of September, we're joining up with Noisy Cricket to talk about recognising women's worth in the workplace. So please join us at B&Y Mellon for a great evening of debate, discussion and fantastic speakers we've got coming along to that. I'll also be talking on a panel on the 13th of September as well about inclusive workplaces, so we would love to see you at that event too. We've partnered with Michael Page to launch a cross-sector mentoring programme starting in October, connecting some of our wonderful power list with emerging leaders. Why not check out Claire Eddington's series of blogs? Join her with a brew each Thursday morning for Self-Curious, a weekly personal development download, and get the latest on how to get more done, forge fantastic relationships, and generally unleash more of your most awesome self at work and play. Who doesn't want some of that? We've got Northern Power Futures coming up in November, and we've got great support from Majid, the Lord Mayor of Sheffield, who'll be speaking, as well as brilliant support from Andy Burnham, the Metro Mayor for Manchester, who'll be launching a new initiative at the event. So join us for Reverse Mentoring Live, career conversations, Snapchats and discussions on the future of work at Manchester Central. Thank you to EY, our headline partners, and Vodafone, our innovation partners, for helping bring this to life. We're working with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and the Star Academies are helping us reach colleges and hard-to-reach areas to be part of the festival too. Get in touch if you want to know more. hello@northernpowerfutures.com. And if you want to sort of read a bit more background as to where this all came from and why we're doing it, check out the fabulous futurist Maya Dibley's take on what Northern Power Futures is to her. We'll be announcing Newcastle dates and venue too for Northern Power Futures over in the North East. Well, that's it. Please leave us a review. And if you've got any Ask the Hive questions, then please send us a voice memo, share it with us, and we'll throw that out to the Northern Power women community. Thanks again, and have a great month.
As you heard Simone say, we'd love to hear any questions or requests for advice that you have for Ask the Hive, or any feedback at all that you have on the podcast. Whatever the reason, just get in touch. Send us a WhatsApp message. Here is our number, 07928 387 712. That's 07928 387 712. Thanks. Right, here we go. Our host this month in the beautiful Tees Valley was the University of Teesside. And what a discussion we had, taking on topics of long career breaks, whether businesses need policy for sexual harassment, and whether the North East really feels part of the Northern Powerhouse. I was so excited by this discussion, in fact, I forgot how to count. So you will hear me refer many times to episode 14. I, of course, mean episode 15. Please forgive me. Well, good afternoon, and what an absolutely spectacular North East welcome from Teesside University this afternoon as we are recording episode 14. Yes, woo, of the Northern Power Women podcast. As ever, 3 fantastic panellists join us today, a whole host of brilliant audience members, and 3 questions that we're going to chew over. And I know I bang on about this every month, but this is, as ever, the start of the conversation, please. What we're about to discuss here are questions that we've got from you, suggestions made by you about things you would like to hear more about and discuss. So please, once you've listened to the podcast, tweet us at North Power Women, email podcast@northernpowerwomen.com, tie a note round a pigeon's knee, whatever you fancy doing, just get in touch because we would love to hear from you. So without further ado, please let us welcome our 3 fantastic panellists today. There is the wonderful Caroline Theobald. She's the chair, First Face to Face Limited and North East Initiative on Business Ethics, Honorary Consul for Sweden, no less. Correct. Yeah. Caroline's passionate about entrepreneurship, education, opportunity for all, international working and good business behaviour, which I very much like indeed. Welcome to Caroline, thank you. A big hello as well to Angela Lockwood. She's the Group Chief Executive for North Star Housing Group, which provides high-quality housing and services for 4,000 plus tenants across Teesside, including 5 women's refuges, a scheme for women with complex needs, and also a women's homelessness scheme as well. Thank you very much to Angela. Welcome. And last but absolutely not least, a big hello to Paul Berry, who's managing partner for the Endeavour Partnership. Paul was born in Middlesbrough. He's lived in the Tees Valley all his life. He is a passionate advocate for his home and the people who live here. Paul, you are amongst friends. Welcome. Thank you for being here as well. Right, I'm going to start with you, please, Caroline. And the first question we have today is so much of the dialogue around the Northern Powerhouse seems to be around Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds. Does Teesside feel left out of the conversation here? What challenges are you facing and what do you need?
It's an interesting one, actually. With all respect to your day job, I think a lot of this has been created by the media. You just have to spend a bit of time in the Tees Valley, as you're doing today, among the fantastic people who have welcomed you here today, to say that actually it's to learn that it's people who make a powerhouse, and the people in the Tees Valley are making a powerhouse. I was in the Mayor's office today and you could feel it. It's electric. There's all sorts of things happening all around the Tees Valley. It's why I've launched the If We Can, You Can challenge here. I know that the university and the Combined Authority are leading on the Leap 50 initiative, which is to try and encourage the next generation of scale-up businesses. And with my business ethics hat on, the Combined Authority are thinking, let's make it a virtue. With Angela and Paul's help of, let's make the Tees Valley a place that is known internationally as a place that does good business. So we may not be in the media conversations, but everybody's chatting here. We just need to raise the profile and let people see what's going on.
Is the money getting to you, though? Is Westminster listening to you? If you're waving enough, is Westminster going, yes, we see you, we're coming? Or do you feel you're waving and no one's listening?
Well now, there is a man, who's a mayor called Ben Houchen. And Ben Houchen is a Conservative. And Ben Houchen appears to have a direct line to Westminster, so things are happening. Greg Clark's up and down from here like a dose of salts. He's got all 5 of the leaders of all of the local authorities working together. This is a powerhouse.
Positivity. I love that from Caroline. Yes, and woos. Angela, do you share that positivity? Do you feel overlooked here in Teesside or not?
Not so much overlooked. Sure, we're one of the smallest ones. But, there's something very helpful about sometimes being under radar as opposed to too much above the radar. And I think what Tees Valley do really well and have a history of doing is working really hard to produce results. And I think that's what we're doing here. I get the fact, nobody's going to ever compete with Manchester. Apart from the fact that they've got a very broad portfolio of work, Tees Valley sensibly have decided to focus on what really matters here and are getting on with it. So, would I trade in delivery for PR and media? Yeah, every day of the week. Could we do with a bit more PR and media? Possibly. Are we working hard to get it? Yes, we are. Is there more to come? Of course.
What more would you want? If you could wave a wand now and change one thing, what would it be?
Well, I'm from a housing background, so, I build houses, affordable houses, social housing. And the one thing that we're working hard to get is a really good housing deal for the Tees Valley area. We're into place shaping, place making, and that's a big priority for the Combined Authority, amongst all the other things. So for me, being very, very sector specific, I'd like to see a really good housing deal where we get our money and we're able to do what we want with our money, as opposed to central government telling us what we do with our money. We're not far away from that. I'm absolutely certain of it. And actually, we stand a better chance of getting it because of the Combined Authority than we would have done if we didn't have a Combined Authority. So more work to be done, but I'm right behind it.
So real positivity. This is such an amazingly supportive place to be in. It's brilliant. And, I started off by introducing you, Paul, about saying how proud you are of the fact that you are, born and raised in this neck of the woods, wouldn't live anywhere else. Is it still a good place to do business?
Absolutely, yes. I've been here all my life, as you say. I've lived through the good times when people would emigrate into Teesside from more prosperous parts of the country that we recognise today. So I got friends who came from Essex, from Aberdeen, literally from all over the country, who've moved to Teesside because it was the El Dorado of the 60s and 70s. We're not quite the El Dorado these days, but I'm more optimistic now than I had been for 20 years. I think, as Caroline says, Ben Houchen is doing an absolutely fantastic job. The politicians seem to be putting their political differences behind themselves, and Ben is liaising with government, and I think it's great that, and it's helpful that we have a Tory mayor and a Tory government. I'm not quite sure what would happen from a political point of view if either complexion would change, but for now, it's working absolutely brilliantly. And the Combined Authority have got their act together. One of the differentiating factors between Teesside and other parts of the country is that we have got our act together. Further north, there is some envy, I think, that the politicians can't actually agree on how they want to move forward. But we have. And also we've got the South Tees site that is probably the most exciting industrial project anywhere in Europe. And that's going to come to fruition over the next 20 years. There is a rival firm based in Newcastle that has opened an office in Teesside because they see Teesside as the place to be rather than Tyneside. And I think that says it all.
What you can't see was the little wry smile that Paul just gave. Just a final point on this. What about connectivity? I travelled from Manchester today. My train was delayed. It meant I missed the connection in Darlington. It's only 12 miles away. I had to wait 45 minutes for another train. connectivity, if we were down south, if we were in London, to get 12 miles between places, there would have been about 14 trains on the underground. Is that still an issue? Is transport still an issue in kind of facilitating business on Teesside?
It's an issue for the North East. There was a piece in the Financial Times 2 or 3 years ago that basically said that if there had been better connectivity between Teesside and Tyneside, the economies of both Teesside and Tyneside would boom and prosper. Transport is a problem. We've got a combined authority and a mayor with a transport budget. And I very much hope that he and the other members of the Northern Powerhouse are going to be able to sort this out.
Anybody here who, I'm presuming majority of you, if not all of you, live on Teesside right now. Do you see yourselves living here in 5 years? Do you see it as a place you will stay 5-10 years? Anyone thinks they might leave? I'm moving. Simone, you realise people in Liverpool can hear this? She'll commute, she said. So is there a general consensus from the audience that this positivity felt by the panel? Do you share that positivity? Yeah. I'm lunging towards the back of the room. This might take some time because it's kind of a labyrinth of desks here. How do we even get to you? Is this? I'm going past Di. Hello, Di. Right, hello. Yes, let me speak to you.
Okay. On that point, I think the evidence that I can clearly say is that I went to school in Darlington, I've been brought up in Darlington, I've always lived up here, and I can categorically say that a lot of people left. They went to London, they had the career that they thought they wanted, then they're all having families and they're all coming back. And because you can get high quality level of housing, there are issues, I know that. They can get great leisure facilities, they're good education, you've got fresh air on your doorstep. And I've seen it, physically seen it, that so many of my friends are now coming back, and that's a huge... And they're great ambassadors as well for the area, and I would want to live nowhere else. I'm really passionate about the Tees Valley.
And with those friends who are coming back with their young families, will there be opportunities for those young families when those young families themselves, when the young kids get to leave school and go to uni and move on, will they be able to stay here?
That's a really important question, and a point that Ben brought up at the last Tees Valley Business Club meeting that I attended, is that he's highlighting the critical resource in careers advice and keeping young people here and allowing them to, especially women, go into areas that aren't traditionally for women, or they're seen as men's jobs. For me, there is no right or wrong. It's just something that you're really good at. And I totally hear what Paul was saying on the transport side. Ben is passionate about linking the areas together, about getting rail networks between Darlington and Teesside. He's really working on a national level to try and make that happen. So I think with careers advice, really helping to bring here and helping start-up businesses and small and medium enterprises, because ultimately they'll be the ones that will keep people here in this area.
Thank you very much indeed. Great to hear from you. And as I said, this is the start of the conversation. As ever, anything you'd like to add, anything you would like to bring to the conversation, podcast at northernpowerwomen.com, or of course you can also tweet at northpowerwomen. Right, let's march on to question number 2. And Angela. Now, this is just a conversation we keep returning to, not just on the Northern Power Women podcast, but I think in society, actually. Last month, the Parliamentary Women and Equalities Commission had published a 5-point plan to deal with sexual harassment in the workplace. They say businesses are failing to deal with this. Now, we know from a Comres poll this year, more than half of women and a fifth of men said they'd experienced sexual harassment at work. Of the women who'd been harassed, 63% didn't report it. Of the men who'd been harassed, 79% didn't report it. Victims kept it to themselves. Essentially, what can we do? What steps need to be taken by businesses to ensure staff feel empowered to report this behaviour? It's still going on, Angela.
Yeah, sure, of course it's still going on, and has been going on for an awful long time, hasn't it? I mean, the Me Too campaign has brought to the fore. And let's be honest about it, it's been happening in Westminster, never mind, anywhere else. So it's a big issue out there. And it's interesting because about 6 months ago, I said to my staff, and bear in mind that at the time we had an all-female senior team, I asked to have a look at our sexual harassment policy. And actually, we don't have a sexual harassment policy. We had a bullying and harassment policy. And I kind of thought, you know what, that is not untypical of organisations. So obviously, we did something about that, and we drafted up a new sexual harassment policy. However, I also know that some of the best companies in the world can have a fantastic sexual harassment policy, but still have major sexual harassment going on in the workplace, do you know? Some of the best equal opportunities policies are in organisations that don't demonstrate equal opportunity. So, you know, let's be honest, a sexual harassment policy is the starting point, but it's not the end point. And I think a lot of organisations think because they've drafted a new policy, well, that's it, we can all just move on with our lives and everything should be sorted by then. And of course, that's not the case at all. So what we've done in our organisation is not only have we drafted the policy, working with people in the organisation using best practice, we've also had a lot of training and development, and also our HR people have been trained to be very sensitive around the areas of sexual harassment. So there's a strong message going out that this behaviour is not okay in any way, shape or form for men or women. It's mainly primarily women who do suffer as a result of it, but not exclusively. And it's absolutely an imperative that you report it, but we haven't had any reports yet. So either it's not going on or we're not doing enough yet. So our journey continues. And I think we're doing more than most organisations. And I'd be very interested to know what the experiences of other people.
Thank you very much indeed. That's really interesting that the policy didn't even exist. You go and check it out and it's not there. But you went to search. That's the difference, I suppose, where a lot of businesses, it might not even occur to them. Paul, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's important for it to be easy to report so you can have great policies and great ethos. But it occurred to me when I was thinking about this question the other day, what if it's your line manager that actually is abusing you in a way and harassing you? So one of the things that I'm going to look at, and this question prompted me to do so, is to basically make it very easy for people to bypass their line managers within my organisation, so that if they are suffering in whatever way, and it's something that they, for whatever reason, can't discuss with their line manager, then they have got a very easy route to know where else to go. It's something that I may be blissfully unaware of. I'd like to think it's something that we're quite a small organisation. We're less than 60 people within the firm. Everyone knows everyone else on a first name terms basis. And I think that we have a very open and friendly approach one to another, and we try not to have hierarchies, and I try to be inclusive. So I'd be extremely disappointed if I discovered that we had a problem. But I don't want to be complacent. I want to make sure that whenever there may be a problem, there is a very clear route for someone, or multiple routes for someone to share their concerns so that it gets to me or to someone else in management.
It's a very good point you've made, that you said, you know, you hope you're not being naive because you see your ship as a very, very happy ship. And I suppose the difficulty is sometimes someone else right next to you might be seeing it in a different way. And other companies I've spoken to have said sometimes that comes as a real shock. So your idea of looking at the policy as a whole is obviously incredibly important, because you are aware that, OK, it's all right for me where I am, but what if? And that's, I suppose, what a lot of chief execs need to be asking themselves.
I think that's absolutely right. It's very easy, as I say, to be complacent, to think, well, it happens to them, it won't happen to me or my organisation. And none of us are immune. It's down to the individual that you employ, who may be a predator or who may have tendencies that aren't particularly savoury. So none of us can rest on our laurels. We've all got to be vigilant, and we've got to have structures in place and policies in place to make it absolutely clear and easy for people to report and do something about it.
Thank you, Paul. Caroline, finally to you on this question. You work a lot with business ethics. Does this need to be something that's discussed a lot more? I mean, there's been some, I suppose, there's been some angry reaction to the Me Too campaign. Actually, people think it's overblowing, you know, little things that don't matter. And actually, if we make it bigger, will it not make it go away in a sense? The more we talk about it, the less pernicious it becomes.
That's interesting. I want to hook into both what Paul and Angela said, and indeed what Northern Power Women is about as well. And to do that, I actually looked at what happened in what's going on in Sweden, because as we know, Sweden's well known for sort of gender equality. But what's been happening there, but they have exactly the same problems with us in terms of imbalance in terms of particularly in technology industries, about representation in the workforce, particularly in tech. And actually it's from the tech industries, where there's only 21% I think of women employed, that a movement, 7 women got together to start with, not to name and shame. And I think that, because this is one of the things I think that made the Me Too, subject to criticism, because you can get it wrong. What this is about is much more about pulling in collective voice to make structural change. So to try and they've met twice this year, well, twice actually within the last 2 months, with the gender equality minister in Swedish government, to say, right, well, what can we put in place here that will make that will bring about structural change? And there have been 7 proposals. And the picking up on Paul's point, it very often happens with imbalance. So it's actually getting independent whistleblowers, finding people who you don't have to report to your line manager, but you take it outside. There's another route through. Picking up Angela's point about education, making greater education about what sexual harassment is. And zero tolerance, but not doing it in a finger-pointing way, doing it in a way where it makes sense. So trying to do it structurally, which I think is very helpful. And if I've picked up what Simone is trying to achieve with Northern Powerhouse, it's the same thing. It's something that's inclusive, that starts small and builds out from little acorns. Big oaks grow, and so that it's something that people can get into, because it's not about finger pointing.
Everybody here, would you feel confident if you were a victim of sexual harassment at work? Would you feel confident about knowing where to report it? Hands up if you would know what to do if you were a victim of sexual harassment. Would you know who to go and talk to? Just under half, I would say. And would you feel confident as well in being believed? So not just the practical thing of knowing where to go, but would you feel confident, yes, I think my voice would be heard? Yeah, most of the people who said they knew where to go. But interesting that most of half of the audience thought, well, I wouldn't actually know who to go and talk to. And that goes back, I suppose, doesn't it, as well, Angela, to the idea of having a very clear-cut policy, and as you were saying, Paul, as well. Thank you so much. Really interesting stuff. Hopefully we'll get to the point we don't have to have that conversation in the near future, but, let's talk about it more till we don't have to talk about it at all. Good stuff. Right. Let's get on to question number 3 then this afternoon, please. Now, this was very interesting. Interesting, I think, if you're a business owner to hear this one as well. A new report says that career-obsessed workers, people who are just working, real workaholics, need more breaks. And not just popping to the park or going to the gym at lunchtime. The advice being offered now by some experts is take months or even years off work, travel the world, go and enjoy yourself. Your job will still be here when you get back. I suppose the idea is we're all working so much longer now. Why leave all our retirement till right at the end? Why not take some of our retirement in our 40s and 50s, then go back to work for 20 years, and then we'll have a bit less retirement at the end, but we've done our retirement while we're still young and vibrant. Interesting concept. Who haven't I started with yet? I haven't started with you, Paul, have I? I'm going to start with you, Paul. Would you have done this? Could you have done it? Would you like to have done it?
I don't think I would, actually, because I used to be career obsessed to the extent that I used to be a sole practitioner. I used to look forward to bank holidays because I could work all day without interruption from clients. And then I was married and had a young daughter, and I thought, this is ridiculous. My life is passing me by and I'm spending all time at work. So I've developed, I don't think it would work for me sort of taking long breaks and then going back, but what's worked for me is basically getting a good balance in my life. Sort of having the balance so I can spend time with my family, who are now grown up, so I could spend time doing things I enjoy doing. And clearly when you have a family, you devote your time to work and family. You don't have much time for much else. But as your family grows up, then you can develop hobbies and interests that you had before, perhaps. So a career-obsessed person, I don't think, actually would take that advice because they'd be too obsessed with their career. But I think someone who's sane and is well-balanced would live for the moment, would have a fulfilling work environment, but also equally have a fulfilling home and social environment, so that no one ever knows how long one is on this world for. So I'd like to think that I've, if anything was to happen to me tomorrow, I'd like to think I've had a fulfilling and enjoyable life.
We've gone very philosophical, haven't we, for an afternoon in Teesside? That's lovely. Yes, you're right. I'm interested to hear, actually, Caroline, about, your connection with Sweden, the kind of different attitude to education and society and work in that neck of the woods. Is this a more common practice in Sweden?
Yes. And the whole work-life balance thing is far, far bigger. When you're at work, you work very hard. When you go home, you are absolutely away and switched off. But actually, what I was thinking when I was... you can see why we wanted Paul on the panel, can't you? Because he's just so lovely. But when I was thinking about this, I think that this is written, in what I call what work used to look like. I don't think necessarily work looks like that necessarily anymore, or increasingly it's changing. And because we are in the Tees Valley, I want to sort of shout out two quite well-known names from here. Visualsoft were very early in actually adopting this sort of, take holidays when you want, and far more flexible approaches to working. And Bethany Ainsley, who's an award-winning social entrepreneur here, she's also, when she goes around, working with people, she says, look, it doesn't need to be 9 to 5, counselling them on different ways in which they can work in order to get the best alternatives for the people who are working there, but also actually it's the best for business, because if you have people who you're working with them, because it's people who do business with people, isn't it? And if you're creating a productive place in every sense of the word, the business is going to go up on a rising tide. Now that's much more actually like the Swedish model. And the other thing is that again in Sweden, although there are patches just like here, but extraordinary gender equality. And I remember talking to some senior colleagues at the embassy. She was number 2, and he was number 2 at the embassy, and his wife was sort of in a PR role. She got offered a brilliant job in America, and I said, well, what are you going to do, Per? He said, I'm going to look after the children. Now, would you get that here? Not a lot, I don't think. But there's a real understanding that actually men and women have where there's opportunity, they should be allowed.
And childcare isn't seen as a lesser role either.
Absolutely not.
Can I just, as an aside, say episode 13 of the Northern Power Women podcast is entitled Let's All Be Like Swedish Men. And you will find out why if you listen to episode 13 of the Northern Power Women podcast. There's a little teaser. I suppose, though, if you're a small or medium business owner and one of your members of staff comes to you and says, I'm going to take a year off because I want to go and travel the world and I will come back a much more rounded, better experienced person and I will be dedicated to you, see you in a year, Is it not fair to say you might freak out and go, I've now got to replace someone for a year or actually, is that just how the world is going to and should be?
I think it should. And actually, if you think about it, if people are going, quite rightly, people are going to have babies, they're off, there's maternity cover. Why couldn't there be sabbatical cover in the same way? It's time out, isn't it? And if it's going to be, that time out is going to enrich those people, they're going to bring something back into the business.
I took 3 months off 18 months ago and took my children travelling for 3 months and homeschooled. That was hard. But no, one of the best things I've ever done. And I was in a lucky enough position being freelance to be able to do that. But I would recommend it if you can do it.
If you can afford it, I think.
Well, exactly. It was, we're still paying that off, but never mind. It was great. We have the memories as we eat our baked beans. Finally then to you, Angela, do you see a time when actually the most healthy thing to do is take a bit of your retirement mid-career?
It's an interesting concept, isn't it? And I'm of the generation where you had a sort of 3-stage career. education, work, retirement, and that was it. It was very linear. And I have a son who's challenging all of that with me, and I just worry about his pension all of the time.
What's one of those? Says the freelancer. Yeah,
exactly. But I'm of a different generation. But I think we're into 8th stage types of career patterns, aren't we? That's the future of it all, whether we like it or not. And I actually get the fact that people, I mean, if you're born in 2000 in the developed world, they reckon 50% of them are going to live till 100. So what does that then mean for society? And what does that then mean for the workplace? And what does that then mean for retirement? Because you ain't going to be able to retire with a decent pension at 65, because you need such a long pension then, don't you? So I get the fact that the order is being completely shaken up, and I understand why it needs shaken up. What I don't understand is how organisations yet are going to adjust to it, but I understand it theoretically. I think in my broadest, most liberal moments, I think, let's just go for it and let people do it. And then I go back to my chief exec's role and think, oh, God, will I manage that? And I think that's the dilemma that we're in at the moment. We're in transition, I think. I mean, increasingly in our workplace, we do give sabbaticals. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you let a great person go off for a year and come back? Because if you don't do that, you're going to lose them anyway. And actually, my experience is they come back reinvigorated. The hardest part is holding that post open for a year. And that's something employers have to get around. We have to get our head around the flexibility around that. So, let's go for it. We have no core hours at our place. You can come and go, when you want, as long as the job gets done and you put your 35 hours in or whatever it is. So increasingly, and I never thought that would work. So increasingly, we're becoming more flexible. I think, give us another 10 years and we're going to have to embrace the 8th stage career. Why wouldn't somebody want to take a few years off and go and travel and come back and do it and do a job, then go off in another 10 years and come back and do it, because they're not going to be able to do it when they're 80-year-old. So I get it. I get the concept, and I think we're all going to have to do some work on that.
Has anyone here taken a sabbatical? Would anyone here? Yes, one. Let me just quickly lunge at you. Hello. How long did you take off and what did you do?
I took a year because I got a bit confused with my kind of career, where I was going, what I was doing. So instead of leaving, I took a year and I did a year as a freelancer. And it was the best thing I did for the opposite reason. I realised that I was really gone mad as a freelancer and just in an office on my own, went a bit crazy, and absolutely loved coming back and completely changed my tack on how I approached it. So it was the opposite way, but the support. So to actually take that sabbatical was amazing.
Look at that. If your employer had gone no, then they would have lost out on you being brilliant and coming back.
Yeah, and that was Teesside University, which is brilliant.
And by happy luck, look where we are stood now. Hooray! Anyone else taking a sabbatical? Would anyone else like to take a sabbatical? Take a year off, travel the world, find yourself? There's some nodding. No one's daring to put their hand up, though, because some bosses are in the room. Not me. Talk to me afterwards. One, yes. What? So are you going to do it? No, but. Because I've had... Let me lunge to you. I'm lunging. Sorry. I'm lunging. I'm in the labyrinth of... Gosh, this is... labyrinth of tables. Right, yes. So you'd like to take one, but you're not going to do it?
No, I don't want to take one, because actually in my career I've had 5 career changes now, taken complete kind of left field decisions. Most recent one, leaving venture capital, moving into the charity sector. I did take a month off in between jobs, if that...
Oh, woo!
There you go. But for me, that change in career and having the confidence actually to do that has been my refreshing and that kind of reflecting phase, if you like. So for me, I don't need to. I get that buzz and that new energy and that lease of life and by meeting different people all the time and learning from them all the time. So for me, no, it's not a sabbatical, but it's about different life experiences and keep challenging myself, to be honest.
A change is as good as a rest, as someone probably said once. And the Northern Power Women podcast, of course, is a brilliant place to meet lots of different people, hear lots of different stories and experiences every single month. Thank you so much for being such a brilliant audience. Give yourself a round of applause. And of course, to our fantastic panellists, Caroline Theobald, to Angela Lockwood, and also to Paul Berry. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much if you were part of that terrific audience. And we'd love to come and visit you. If you'd love to host us, do get in touch. Just email podcast@northernpowerwomen.com. Now, this month's big interview is a woman who's got an amazing story to tell about refusing to be defined by some of the smallest minds in society, and also refusing to be limited in being an entrepreneur by the fact she was a woman. Professor Jane Turner. She's a great businesswoman, Pro-Vice-Chancellor at Teesside University, and also the institution's gender champion. And I asked her what that role entailed.
The gender champion role is basically to drive gender equality across the university in terms of our staff, but also our student population as well. So it's about 16,000 people in total that I'm responsible for, and certainly for the student population, it's about driving aspiration and ambition in our young female students, but also making sure that there is equality of opportunity across the university as well.
In real terms, on a sort of day-to-day basis, what little things do you do to make that happen?
I haven't established myself as this formally, but I guess I'm a mentor, I'm a sounding board, certainly for female colleagues in the university, but also reaching out to the student population as well, primarily through the Students' Union, and just giving people support and advice and guidance and encouraging them to be the best that they can be. And if there are things that are not going well or positively for them, it's about giving them the courage to go and change that and disrupt that and actually accept and hold the mirror up. That actually is not acceptable, and there's something you can do about that. So empowering women to go and make a difference and to not accept. And quite often we get stuck in routines. And also there's a strong narrative in the Tees Valley that is quite male-dominated. And for women and young women studying here, they are immersed in that. And so I quite often disrupt that narrative, because I think that's my job as gender champion, and through that disruption, change views and perceptions and trajectories.
So tell me about you. How did you, Jane, born and bred in this neck of the woods, went away for a bit, came back? Tell me about your journey of how you started off on here, because you worked in your parents' business, didn't you, when you were a teenager?
I did. So I was born in Hexham in Northumberland and moved to Gisborough when I was 3 years old. And my father worked in Middlesbrough. He then set up his own business when I was about 8 years old, a manufacturing company. So in holidays and at weekends, I would work with my dad. And as an entrepreneur, you tend to work 7 days a week, 16-hour days. So I didn't see much of him, so I saw him by being in the business as well. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I left school, or indeed college. No idea. My brother had a very clear career pathway, knew what he wanted to do, and that worried me as a young teenager. And the career advice that I recall was basically I sat in a room, was given a big index, a big book with categories of jobs, and was encouraged to look at the secretarial section. And, I got my O-levels. I was in the top sets at school, so I wasn't an underperformer. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And at the age of 19, I became a single mum, and I was judged pretty negatively by people at that time around that, therefore, how my life would turn out as a single mum. And I think I just developed this burning inside that actually I will prove them wrong. I don't know who the them were, but people had views about how my life would turn out, and I will go on and I will achieve things. I have no idea what that will look like, but I will never be in a position where you have the right to negatively judge me.
So having that burning desire and that drive to prove them wrong, but not knowing how you were going to do that, and being a mother, that's pretty tough circumstance to find yourself in. What did you do?
It is tough, but I wanted to be a positive role model for my son, so that was the main driver. And then I guess I reflected back to the times when I felt most happiest outside of school, which was when I was working with my dad. And when I was 16, they went on holiday, my parents overseas, and they left me in charge of the business for 2 weeks. Wow. So I was managing all of these hairy-arsed, guys with attitude, and the bank. And I loved it. And I just reflected back to that time and thought, actually, I really came alive when I was in that business environment. And leadership really caught my eye as well, because my dad had left school at 15, no qualifications, but he was an awesome leader. And it wasn't about ego. It wasn't about the trappings of wealth. He just genuinely wanted to do a good job, deliver great service and great product, and build a loyal team. And he did that. And so I was very struck by seeing my father as my father, but my father as a leader of a business. And I just wanted to go out and be a good leader. And this burning ambition to be a positive role model for my son.
I have lost count of the number of completely awesome women I have interviewed on this podcast who cite their father as one of their major, if not the most major influence in their career. We need to have more conversations about that, because a lot of the time we talk about female role models, and I wonder if you had any of those as well, if you had any women that you could look around going, well, she is doing what I want to do, or she is where I want to be. Was that woman there for you?
No, it wasn't. But I was so internally driven and motivated. I don't think I was particularly looking externally either. I just knew that I needed to sort my life out. And I didn't want to become, because of the judgments around what had happened to me, I didn't want to expose any vulnerabilities to anybody else. So I just became very internally focused. But the backdrop being my dad was a great guy and a great leader. So if there's a role model in the background, it was him. And therefore I knew that I came from good DNA. My mum too is part of this, but particularly because I saw my dad in that leader role. So no, there is not, and I've been asked that question many times, there is not a female role model that jumps out, other than my grandmother was a school teacher, and when she got married in those days, she had to give up teaching. My grandfather, whom I never met, died when she was in her early 50s, and she retrained and went back into teaching as a 53-year-old woman. And I thought that was pretty impressive. So, yeah, in the background, a role model there, perhaps.
So as a young woman who had this drive and this ambition and this great role model in her dad and that person who she could endeavour to be like, were you accepted in that world of the cut and thrust of the business world? Or as a woman, did people not take you seriously?
Well, what I did was I thought I'm going to have to get some qualifications here, and I want some gravitas and some substance to what I want to do. So I moved to London and I got married, and then I had my daughter Harriet 3 years later, and then we moved back to the northeast. So when Harriet was 2, I enrolled on an HNC in business and finance. Huge trepidation, thinking I'll never be able to do this, I'll fail, I'll not be good enough, all of those things and elements.
Standard.
Yeah. And I had 2 years doing a part-time programme, studying in the evenings and at weekends, and I absolutely came to life. I loved it. I thrived on it. I then went to do a degree part-time. I then went to do a master's part-time. And the lecturers that I came into contact with during that time, I remember thinking, there's no relevance here. They're not practitioners. They haven't been there and done this stuff. And I've got some experience, I guess, of working in my father's business. I think I could be a lecturer, and I think I could bring this material to life. So I got a part-time lecturing role. And the confidence just grew over time. And then partway through that, I then thought, actually, to be taken seriously, I need to work for a blue chip. And a job came up at Orange Telecom, which I applied for and was successful. So I went to work for Orange and ended up as their leadership specialist at Orange. And from there, my career just took off big time. So I don't take any nonsense. So I needed to take myself seriously first, which I took the time to do, and have the foundations and the credibility for me that I then felt confident to go out on a business stage and hold my own, basically.
Anecdotally, women aren't as entrepreneurial as men, is a phrase I hear. They're not as willing to take risks as men are. They're not as willing to put themselves out there or take no nonsense as men are. Has that ever been a fair thing to say?
I think it's a fair thing to say. Again, I go back to careers advice and guidance, and to what extent are young women and young girls encouraged to be risk takers? And I think they're quite male. The behaviours that are associated with that, I think, are quite male. You would associate as male traits. That's what I'm trying to say. And maybe for some women at the background, there's at some point I may want to have a family, and therefore where does all of this risk taking take me when I need to get serious and be responsible for a family as well? But again, it's just about encouraging people to be the best that they can be and providing opportunities, and there is no reason why there should be a gender split as to those who are more entrepreneurial or not. If we look at emotional intelligence, research shows that women are more emotionally intelligent. Arguably, to me, if you are an entrepreneur and you want to run your own business, emotional intelligence is going to get you a long way in that regard. So I think it's how we position and phrase what we mean by an entrepreneur to change, again, disrupt that narrative.
When I think about my education, I'm lucky enough to have received a really great education. You know, I went all the way through school, I went to uni. I don't remember a single lesson during that time in which business was ever even mentioned, or the notion of ever being an entrepreneur was ever mentioned. Does this need to become, do you think, more ingrained in our curriculum from day dot?
Absolutely. And I think in the way that we are structured in terms of our curriculum in primary schools, in terms of the national curriculum, I think quite often we squeeze the creativity out of our young children, and arguably, how do you get that back? So I think it is absolutely essential that we nurture that and value that as a trait within young people as well. But at Teesside University, what we've made very clear is setting up and running your own business is a legitimate career pathway, regardless of your gender. And we will create the ecosystem, and you'll have the opportunity to experiment whilst you're here to find out if that is a route that you want to go down at this age. And if not, you can park it and you may want to pick it up later in life. But opportunity for all, and let's stop squeezing out the creativity of our very young people.
You mentioned, Jane, about not having a female role model in a business sense when you were growing up. You now are the only female Pro Vice-Chancellor here at Teesside University. You are seen as a role model now. Is there a pressure that comes with that?
I don't put myself on a pedestal. I don't see it as a pressure. I'm just authentically passionate about this space because I've lived it. And when people negatively judge you, that switches something on inside and it's never switched off. So it's a legitimate, and it's just an unconscious behaviour now that actually I've got a job to do and I need to drive change for the next generation. And I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer last September. Complete shock out of the blue. And ovarian cancer is obviously a very female illness to have. And whilst I was recovering after the surgery, which was pretty extensive, and I was still in hospital, my daughter brought me a book in which just had on the front your thoughts, and I was just jotting stuff down and thinking, actually, something very personal has happened to me as a woman that wouldn't happen to a man. My surgeon had said to me, there's something about the resilience of women in the Northeast, which I know because I've lived and grown up here. And that, even, I don't know how long I've got, but it just gave me more fuel to the fire here that actually enough is enough. It's time for change, and I want to find like-minded people to work with me. So I'm not on a pedestal. I'm not any different to anybody else, but I just think I'm in more of a hurry now than I ever was.
And for people who say, we've made it, more girls are going to university than boys in some areas of the world. You look at, there are more female lawyers joining than male lawyers in certain areas of the country at the moment. The fight's over. We don't need to keep fighting. What do you say to that?
It's not over. We haven't even started. I mean, yet more women go to university. Academically, they are more successful than their male counterparts. Yes, more women might be going into the legal profession, but how many of them are at managing partner status? How flexible? How are they supported? And I appreciate we're pushing through a generational backstop, but hence the hurry, because we need momentum behind this and change. And with the right people, and men need to be part of this. I don't hate men. This has to be a joined up campaign. They have to be part of this. And those who get it and are the early adopters, they're the people I want to work alongside with, because they will help push through. And it's all about disrupting the status quo and actually standing up and saying, that is not acceptable anymore, and that is not good enough. And I will talk. If you don't want to work with me on this, then I'll go and find people who do. But I will not be blown off course.
And someone who does support you, Jane, was a woman you met at a palace in London this year. Congratulations on your OBE. You were due to go earlier in the year, but you weren't very well, as you said, so you had to put it off for a bit. But hey, you got to receive it from the Queen.
I did, and throughout my surgery and my chemo, it was a light, a very dark tunnel. And the number of times I've said to my husband, I won't make it to the palace, and the number of times he said, yes, you will. So yes, I met the Queen, an awesome woman, always held her in the highest regard as a role model. There's a role model. And she asked me which university I worked at, what I did, and I told her that I was part of a group of awesome people driving a campaign for social change around women equality in the region, in the north. And she said, quote unquote, and we need that, don't we? And I said, yes, Your Majesty, we absolutely do. So I am now being very open, saying the Queen has said we need this. So yeah, an amazing experience.
An absolute pleasure to speak to Professor Jane Turner, OBE. Thank you. If you'd love to hear from someone on this podcast, someone's inspired you, a mentor, someone you look up to, let us know who it is. We'd love to talk to them. Just send us an email, podcast@northernpowerwomen.com. So it's time now for Ask the Hive. It's a place where you ask for some career or life advice and the Northern Power Women Network responds. And this month, it's so hard. The ability to switch off when it comes to work emails.
I find it really hard to leave for the day before I've answered every email, and I'm working longer hours as a result. I know not everything's urgent, but I can't seem to break the habit. Can you help?
You're obviously a very conscientious person. What you should try to do then is look at the sort of emails that you're getting and responding to. Are these ones that you've been copied into and you don't really need to be having them? If so, press for an office policy on copying others into emails so that it doesn't happen. You should also press for an office policy on sending emails in out of office hours. And then, so that you can feel that you're going home having completed something, give yourself something totally different to do in the last half an hour of the day. Good luck.
Okay, so Tim Ferriss published a book years and years ago called The 4-Hour Workweek, and in that book he described a process about only responding to emails in a certain period of time. So he used to do it in the morning for half an hour and in the afternoon for half an hour. He had an out of office on saying, I will respond in this time, if it's urgent, ring me. The more you respond to emails, the more emails you're going to get, and it's like a never-ending cycle. So if you only have, a certain period of time, you're not going to be distracted by that. And when I worked at Balfour Beatty, I implemented a no email Thursdays with my team. So what I did, I said to the guys, if any emails came in, you needed to pick the phone up and talk to them. Because if you talk to people, there's not going to be loads of backwards and forwards in emails and misunderstanding, miscommunication, people getting irate because they've read things into emails that aren't actually there. So yeah, it worked really, really well.
My advice would be to set yourself a half-hour time frame at the end of the day to skim read all of your inbox to make sure there was nothing urgent before you leave for the day. Then stop. Don't reply to any of the emails sent after a certain time in the day. They will wait till the next day. I urge you to try this on just one occasion and see what happens.
See, I'm probably a terrible role model because I do sit on an evening and respond to things, but that's because I want to. I feel like working in a business where we give people the freedom to do it or not do it, that's really important. So as long as you know what the guidelines are, then take it from there. But if people are struggling to switch off and they feel like they need to answer every single email, I'd probably just remind yourself, has anyone died? Is there an emergency? How important will it be in a month's time? And then take it from there. And if the answer to those things are no, then leave it to the next day and go and relax.
So being a slave to the inbox is really bad for productivity and creativity, and it's got to be one of the major causes of stress in the workplace. Companies are now recognising that employees tied to their desks answering emails is not the way that they're going to create a profitable, productive workforce, one that's engaged and creative, and they're putting quite a lot of processes in place to tackle this. Some even banning internal emails or putting limits on the number of emails that are sent during the day. From a personal point of view, there's a few things I do to manage my inbox. So firstly, I put filters in place, making sure that I only see the emails that are actually important. Pretty ruthless about unsubscribing and turning off social media notifications. And also being ruthless about deleting, so scanning the subject line and deleting those that just aren't important. But I think one of the most important things, particularly given how technology has meant that we're always on 24/7, we're able to answer emails around the clock. And it's just not good. And actually it's eroding meaningful relationships within the workplace. So what I try to do rather than send emails is actually go and have a face-to-face conversation or pick up the phone to people. And I think what I've found through that is not only is it reducing my inbox, but I'm building better relationships with those that I'm working with, my clients and suppliers. And I guess finally, I think one of the most important things is recognising that sometimes not thinking about business is good for business. Be disciplined with your day, and I certainly set myself a time. So I check my emails every morning for an hour, and then I'll check them twice more during the day at lunchtime and mid-afternoon, and accept that actually at the end of the day it's okay if I haven't finished all the emails, and most people wouldn't expect a response until the next day anyway. So taking a break, And knowing when to switch off is a better way to be productive and focused at work than being a slave to the inbox.
Piece of advice that I don't actually use myself, but I wish I could, would be to have 2 phones, a work phone and a personal phone, and don't look at your work phone after, whether it be 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, but set yourself a deadline and switch it off, put it away. If somebody needs to get you more in your personal life at that point, then your personal phone can be what you use.
Again, such great, thoughtful advice. Thank you so much for being part of it. It really means a lot that you make the effort to get in touch. Now to this month's issue about an age-old internal battle.
So I'm at a bit of a careers crossroads. There's a couple of jobs I'm interested in, and I was just wondering whether it's best to follow my heart or my head.
So what's your gut reaction to that dilemma? Don't keep it to yourself, please. You can help her out a lot if you just get in touch and let us know what you think. You've got our number. Send us a WhatsApp message, 07928 387 712, 07928 387 712. There's a little microphone icon next to the message pane. If you just put your finger on that, say what you've got to say, take your finger off, bam, your message will come to us immediately. Or you can just record something on your smartphone and email podcast@northernpowerwomen.com. If you want any more details about how to get in touch for Us The Hive, it is all about you. It really mean a lot if you did get in touch. All the details are on the podcast page at northernpowerwomen.com. Thank you. So, as I finally get it right, this is episode 15. It's all over for another month. Thank you for being part of everything that we do. We'd love a rating from you or a review wherever you get your podcast from. And of course, love to hear from you. Anything you have to say, any feedback, most welcome. You can tweet us at North Power Women. The next episode, episode 16, arrives for you on Wednesday, the 3rd of October. Until then, this is the Northern Power Women podcast. I'm Sam Walker, and this has been a What Goes On media production for Northern Power Women.